Hello, Wonder Wives. Thanks for tuning back in for day 4 of the Wonder Wife marriage class. What I wanted to do today was share with you some success stories. I was super excited to receive several successes after the end of the Passover holiday. So I wanted to just focus on 2 of them for today, and hopefully we can take some lessons from them and learn a few new ideas as well. Okay, so the first one, I'm going to use some pseudonyms here. So the first one, let's call her Sarah. So Sarah, this is a very common situation we often find ourselves. She was asking her husband to do something for her. She was asking for several weeks. He kept saying he was going to get it done and still hadn't gotten it done. So, what do you do when you're put in a situation like that, right? Do you speak up? Do you not? How do you speak up? So, what I found so impressive from Sarah's story that she shared with me was that it was right before the Passover holiday. The matter with her husband still hadn't been resolved, the test still hadn't been completed, and things had even gotten worse, actually, because it hadn't been resolved. And she had to ask herself whether or not to speak up about it. And she made the decision that this wasn't the right timing to bring this to his attention. Now, later on, once the timing was better, she did mention it to him. Of course, he felt horrible about it and he took care of it immediately and things moved on. She didn't make a big deal out of it at all. But I thought it was so poignant that she was very careful to realize that right before the Passover holiday was not the right time to throw this at him. Whether he would be able to get it done during that time was like almost impossible, right? So I think that that's a great takeaway. And I really thank Sarah for sharing her experience with us that oftentimes before we bring something to the table or even start a conversation about we're in this realm here in this class talking about how to give negative criticism or feedback, we have to ask ourselves, is this the right time right now? Is this person able to receive this information? And are they even able to do anything about it right now? Do they have the tools to be able to do something about it right now? Perhaps waiting for another time would be best. So, yay, Sarah. We all are applauding along with you, I'm sure, listening to this. The other story I wanted to share was from somebody else. Let's call her Daniela. So Daniela had a moment during the Passover holiday where her and her husband had a bit of like a harried conversation with one another. He wanted to know what was planned for the upcoming meals, and she was kind of like in chill out mode and didn't really feel like talking about it and kind of brushed him off. So basically what she explained to me was that she's just in general a much more like chilled out type B type of personality, and her husband is definitely more type A. He wants to know the plan, he wants to know what's coming next. And this is what researcher John Gottman, who's a marriage expert who studied hundreds and hundreds of couples in his love lab in Seattle, some of you may be familiar with his research, this is what he calls a perpetual conflict. So couples will have 2 types of conflicts. Either it's resolvable, they can come to a solution, or it's perpetual. And 69% of issues in marriage are perpetual, meaning it's the same issues that just keep coming up over and over and over again. And what I thought was so beautiful about Daniela's story was she told me she and her husband have been married many, many years. And thank God they have a beautiful, loving, happy, wonderful marriage. It's the same issues that keep coming up. And it's rooted in the fact that they just have very different personality types. So how are they able to work through this? And this is really what's key. They're able to work through it because she and her husband are constantly putting deposits into the relationship. Yes, there are many things where they disagree, where they have different personalities, where there's going to be conflicts arising, but they have so many other things in common. They invest in caring for one another, about listening to one another. And these are some of the things that we're going to be exploring over the upcoming weeks. How to be an active listener, right? They care about one another. They do things for one another, right? They're invested in the relationship and they have enough positive moments and deposits in their bank accounts, so to speak, that when they hit these blips in the road, it's really not that big of a deal. And I think that the way Daniela resolved the situation was so well played. When she finally did speak with her husband about their both feeling kind of negative about the way that they spoke to one another, she didn't go about it in a way where she said, you were attacking me and I didn't like this and whatever. She said to him, I was feeling really tired. When I'm asked a lot of questions, when I feel tired, it makes me feel really overwhelmed. And when I feel overwhelmed, I just can't think clearly or even speak clearly. And that's why I responded in maybe a harsh tone. And he understood that. And he was able to hear that. And it wasn't like, I'm attacking you and this is what you did wrong. It was me. These are my issues I'm trying to work out, and I'm sharing with you how I feel. Maybe you can meet me halfway and you can understand that. And then there's a mutual understanding. So awesome, awesome job, Daniela. I'm so grateful that you shared your experience with us. And I love how also one other great thing that John Gottman brings up in his research is you can tell a lot from the way a conversation is going to go based on the startup. I think he says 96% of the time in conversations, let's say in a 15-minute recorded conversation of him watching couples, you could tell from the first 3 minutes how the conversation is going to pan out based on the way the conversation starts. So just something to keep in mind that when we begin with a harsh startup, things are pretty much doomed to fail. It's better that you even just take a break and then start fresh again later, as opposed to when we start things in a loving way, in a, hey, I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to share with you how I'm feeling, and I'd love to hear how you're feeling. In a positive, open startup, things are much more likely to be successful in the conversation. So thank you all so much for listening, and I'm looking forward to continuing together.